Good morning. Good morning. If I can call the meeting to order, please. Doug, do we have public speakers today?
Yes, we do, sir. We have three: Grover Howell, Murray Bowden, and Joseph Garber. Grover Howell, TWU Local 252.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Grover Howell. I'm the union chairman of TWU Local 252, representing the women and men of MTA Long Island Bus. Long Island Bus has been a part of the MTA family since 1973, and since 1973, there has never been a source of dedicated funding. Today, we are all at a crossroads. Do we regress to 1973 when Long Island Bus was operated with 5 different private companies, or do we continue to move forward towards economic growth and job development for a stronger and healthier Nassau County under the MTA umbrella? The economic stability of Nassau County and the surrounding areas, as well as the fate of 103,000-plus daily customers, rests with the decisions that you, Mr. Walder, and Mr. Mangano rendered today, determining the future of MTA Long Island Bus. Thank you.
Thank you. Murray Bowden.
If I don't move this, you don't see me on the camera. My grandchildren want to see me. Thank you. Good morning. My backpack with all my props is downstairs. It didn't make security. I had a chop saw for the thing, and I had my menorahs, so I just have to change my presentation today. I notice on the Henry Hudson Parkway, they're removing the toll booths, and they're changing the whole system. You've paid about twice as much as you should have done it, and you're going to have an inefficiency because they didn't strike the lines correct. Basically, there needs to be 2, and only 2 Easy Pass lanes. And the last sign for the Easy Pass needs to be 30 yards before the toll. You don't want a driver at the last moment deciding which lane to be in. You want that decision to be moved back at least 30 yards. 50 years ago, we gave the people a chance to go back and forth at the toll booth. You take all the signs off the toll booth, move them back 30 yards, and if they make a mistake, that's tough. You have police officers that can be on the other side, and you're having photo recognition. So the Easy Pass lanes are only 2, not more. Then there's no mixing. And you put a little plastic barrier between the Easy Pass and the cash lanes, 20 yards back, and after the first week, they'll get the message. If you give them the signs at the toll booths, they're going to make a last-minute decision and cut across traffic. And that's not what you want to do for safety. You want the high-speed lanes to go straight through. You don't want mixing and matching. And since you have only 2 lanes going through, coming in and going out, that's all you want at the toll booth. I think they're going to have more than 2. That means there's weaving unnecessarily. If you go to the to the New Jersey Turnpike or to the New York State Thruway, there are 2 lanes. And the ones at Harriman, they're taking the signs off the top, because I discussed it with them, and they're moving them. The last sign will be a quarter of a mile from the toll booth. There'll be no signs at the toll booth anymore.
If you would please summarize, Mr. Bowden.
I brought my menorahs to show you because I'm an artist, but they kept them downstairs and a bunch of other stuff, so maybe next time. Have a nice week.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Joseph Garber is our last speaker.
Good morning, Chair Walder, members of the board. My name is Joseph Garber. I'm a writer of buses and subways with an eye to improving the operations of the MTA New York City Transit with more elements of supervision and basic public administration and business administration comments. My goal is to assist of the improvement of the service. I was very impressed reading the agenda, and you have pages 117 to 127 on governance. I didn't have a chance to digest it completely, but I'm going to raise some points which in the broad spectrum does improve it. As of late, I've seen an upsurge of graffiti on the stations in fare evasion, with station agents not calling out pay a fare. On buses, I've seen heard too many sob stories of non-paying customers giving sob stories to bus operators and riding for free. Many bus operators are not mentioning the mandated ADA announcements. Also, there's too much fraternization going on between customers and BOs on unrelated bus issues. Also, many BOs have the girlfriends who ride from and to the respective bus, and when I do spot it, I do call in. But the Bus Customer Relations Center under Chris Lake, unfortunately, you get a recording now, and they call you back 2 or 3 days later. So that's a very bad concept if we are revising the concept of complaints, Ms. Chairwalder, that you and the mayor discussed to do it around 2 years ago. Many station agents are covering their badges with tape, so it is very hard to see their numbers. Also, some BOs are wearing their badge on their belt, not on their right-hand shoulder. I'd like to get the phone number of Charles Seaton, who's supposed to be the liaison with the press, even though I'm not a member of the press, but I'd like to speak to him, and he refuses to give me his number. I'd also like to communicate with Paul Fulangeris. The Bus Customer Relations Center, as I indicated, has to be revamped, and yesterday I saw at the Marcy Avenue Station 2 service announcements that have anti-police graffiti on it. I have not had a chance to call District 33, but I question if you can have those removed. It's on the J1 site, Manhattan bound. Thank you. It's my first time speaking here, and God willing, I will speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. That concludes today's public speaking.
Did very well.
Doug, thank you, and thank you to our public speakers for those comments. If I may move to the agenda of business, can I ask for a vote, please, to approve the minutes of the special board meeting and the regular October board meeting? Do I have a motion? Is there a second? In favor? Opposed? We have an agenda that has a number of items, but I'd like to stop before we do that and take a moment to recognize Joe Smith. Joe came to me a little while ago, and he sat down in my office, and he said to me that he felt it was time for him to retire. And I have to tell you, the overriding comment that people said to me was, couldn't you talk him out of it? And I think that is probably the first credit that you can give. When every single person, when they heard about this, looked at me and thought it was my fault that I couldn't talk him out of it, and it probably was. But then I kept pointing out that many others tried as well. Sometimes I think we just have to respect that for Joe, it was his time that he felt he should retire and wanted to retire, and we respect that this is the time for him. We should, I think, though, recognize this extraordinary career. Joe started in 1977, he started at Amsterdam Depot. He started as a bus driver. And he rose through, I can't count the number of positions that he rose through. When Joe and I have gone around the system, he has often walked around the depot and pointed out different things that he's done personally within the depot at various times, and you really get a sense of a person who knows this like the back of his hand. When I walked in the door here a little over a year ago, Joe and I did not know each other, but you quickly understood that our bus system was in very, very good hands. It's important to talk about results. The result is that today we have a more efficient, a more effective, and a less costly bus system than we had when Joe took it over. He has literally saved tens of millions of dollars for the taxpayers and riders of our region, and he has been the driving force through innovation. The select bus service that we have today, and we all have watched the rollout of First and Second Avenue over the last month or so. The select bus service we have today would not happen without his driving force, and I think we should recognize that as well. Now, I will say that Joe has me beat in in a number of ways, but in one way, I have two titles, Chairman and Chief Executive. Joe carries three, and probably a sign of the scope of what he's doing. We joke about this, but we forget the scope about what he is doing right now. Senior Vice President of Buses for New York City Transit, President of MTA Bus, President of Long Island Bus, really the first person in our organization to take a mode of transit and really think of it as one company across the board in everything that we are doing in that way, and have to drive through and find the efficiencies, find the synergies, eliminate the redundancies that come from that. He's been the person who led the way in doing that. It's been 33 years, Joe. We owe you, I think, as a board, as a city, as a region, our thanks. On a personal basis, you've been a friend. You'll continue to be a friend, and I've appreciated that. I know that some other people may want to speak, and I think there's certainly an opportunity if people would like to speak at any point now.
For those of you that were at the bus committee meeting, this will sound a little redundant, but that's okay. When you're complimenting someone, you could hear it on a loop. But when Jay had rang me and asked me to chair the bus committee, after chairing capital construction for all those years, which I love doing, and it was great working with Mike, but also it's definitely not a paved road that working on that committee. And I kind of was looking for something that was, I don't want to say easier, but easier. And since Mark has Bridges and Tunnels, which is definitely the, the most joyous of all the committees to chair, I asked about Joe. And Jay had said, I don't know Joe well, but from everything I've heard and from my small tenure with him, you are going to just adore working with him. And I have adored working for you, with you, and you're always available. And it's one thing when someone is willing, but it's another thing when someone is able, and you are both. And sorry for the personal trials that you have right now, and I wish all your child to be well more than anything. And we're here if you ever need us, but I have a feeling we're going to need you, so I hope you'll be there for us. Thank you.
As I said, I guess Monday, I think that New York City has benefited very much from Joe's work in the bus system for all of us. I'm particularly grateful to him because of we thought on the city side, pretty extreme effort of moving the private bus companies from their individual status into the MTA. But I think what we did was nothing. We basically dumped the fragments ultimately into Joe's lap. And I think that he did an extraordinary job in pulling the fragments together into a not yet finished, but certainly tremendously moved ahead, unified bus company and citywide bus system. And I just like to thank him very much for having done that so well.
Yeah, Jay, thanks. I'll just echo what I said on Monday, which is that on my very short time on this board, I found Joe, in my interactions with him at the Long Island Bus, to be smart, responsive, and focused on customers, all of which are great things. The other thing I want to applaud him for is the seriousness of purpose he's brought to Long Island Bus and never treating it as a stepchild. And I think the 30 million riders a year appreciate that. So I thank him for his service.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Aside and apart from the innovations that he's brought globally to our public authority. I appreciate his assistance to me in dealing with regional problems, and as Nassau County has just stated, Staten Island in particular suffers from a feeling, I think rightly so, of inadequate transportation, and in these difficult years where we've been moving in the opposite direction and cutting services, meeting with the public is very challenging, and people are very frustrated. And when Joe is there, I feel that people are getting an honest response, and he deals with them in a way that diffuses the situation. He genuinely emotes his empathy in trying to improve the service, and he follows through, and quite frankly, he has made the situation a lot more palatable than it could have been. And when I have to go out and face angry crowds of people, I say, thank God Joe is going there, and I'm not looking forward to the days beyond him, but I do appreciate these last 2 years having an opportunity to have Joe out there with us on our side. So, Joe, thank you for your service.
I'm not going to say everything that I said on Monday, but I think this is a huge loss for us. This is certainly not to take anything away from Mr. Eyrich, who I'm sure will be wonderful. But Joe is one of the most responsive agency presidents we've had the privilege of working with. You have a question for Joe, you get an answer frequently the same day, sometimes within the hour. You got an example of what a fine manager Joe was when he had a new bus to show the board, and he made sure each and every one of us went down to see it and told us the virtues of the turbo-powered bus and how there's no jerk, or the new bi-level buses for the Staten Island Express service. I mean, this was a guy that lived and breathed buses, and that's really what you want in a manager of a combined bus operation like this. And Joe, I wish you all the best. I hope your personal situation gets better really quickly, and that we haven't seen the last of you, and best wishes.
I don't want to repeat what Andrew said, but I just want to say on behalf of the PCAC staff, Bill Henderson was unable to come, but he did make a point of saying how much he wanted to thank you as president of buses, and the staff there appreciated your enthusiasm. I myself did very much. I'll say one brief incident. There's no advisory for Long Island Bus. There's no citizens advisory, but Joe did give me a call and say, well, is there anybody that we know in Long Island Communities Council who could take a look at a bus map, a proposed bus map? So he did outreach, what I think is above and beyond, and his enthusiasm for buses has turned me from really kind of a rail guy to appreciate buses more. So I appreciate that, Joe, and thank you for your service, and you'll sorely be missed by all of us. Thank you.
Joe has a knack for being able to explain operations to somebody who doesn't operate anything, which I always appreciated. I shared your concern about buses. In fact, when Joe first showed up, I explained to him that although I was very comfortable on any subway you could put me on, it was because I knew where I was going to end up. And I wasn't always sure where I was going to end up on buses, but Joe got me over that. Now, my county doesn't have bus service. We don't see too many buses. But whenever we needed to be bussed around track work, Joe showed up. The first few times the MTA buses showed up in Orange County, it was a big, whoa, what are they doing here? But I also think that his workforce was a little bit stunned at us because we show up with our bicycles and our Razor scooters and even our dogs. However, Joe's ability to pull people together, to pull a whole unit together, really spread out into my county too. So in the end, now when they see an MTA bus in Orange County, everybody's very happy to have it there. So I thank you for many, many days of bussing around track work. Thanks.
Joe had the wonderful distinction of working with the women on this board, all three of us, as committee chairs. So I jokingly said that he was our ladies' man. But Joe's contributions to this place are enormous. You changed the fuel source that we use in these buses, and that has saved this agency millions of dollars. Because you are allergic to sole source contracts, we now have a bus fleet that really does make every dollar count. And in all the trips that I took with you around the depots, when people saw you, they had a light in their eye, which you don't always see when management shows up on the premises. And it's because they knew that you were one of them. You exemplify everything that is good and noble about this agency and your long tenure. God bless you, and thank you.
Just repeating what I said on Monday, Joe, all the changes that you made also in the paratransit system and the reforms, and I was glad to hear that the pilot for yellow taxis was going to take off in December, and I very much want to thank you. I know that would not have happened without you. Just wanted to wish you well.
As Nancy pointed out, Bridges and Tunnel joyously is an agency that gives a huge amount of money to the rest of the system. Because Joe is such a fantastic manager, we really hope that he too would be able to turn a profit and that the revenues would exceed the expenditures of buses. He failed, though. But that's the only thing he failed in. We'll miss you.
He has said that on numerous occasions.
Now we're starting to roast each other.
I just wanted to add my thanks to Joe, and coming from Suffolk County, Joe and I have had many conversations about regional bus. In fact, Joe lives in Suffolk County, not too far from where I live, and we've had a number of discussions about the need for it and what it can mean to the entire region in that context. But, I think there were two instances, or a number of instances, where Joe just showed how important he was and his team was, and from a Long Island perspective, those were, when we were honored enough to host the U.S. Opens on Long Island, in addition to the railroad, the bus system, from all sides of the bus system, played a major role in being able to move thousands of people from one place to another on Long Island, which, as many people know, on Long Island is not the easiest thing in the world to do. But to get them where they wanted to go, to let them enjoy both Shinnecock and Bethpage, and to get them back where they wanted to end up. So from a Long Island perspective, Joe, being a native Long Islander, you know how important that was to the economy of the region. And I want to just say thank you very much for all your service here. You will be sorely missed.
Again, I'll repeat the thanks of the entire board, the city, the metropolitan region. Joe, we will miss you here. We do know you have some personal situations that you need to attend to. We wish you the very best with that. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family to be able to take care of that. No, we're not letting you go too far away. So as Mitch points out, we know where you live. Thank you. Turning to the other business of this meeting, in a moment, Bob Foran will walk us through the November financial plan. I thought it would be useful just to orient everybody to where we are in our budget and planning process. I mean, this is really a process that started back in July. The board considered the preliminary financial plan in July. That provided an early snapshot for us of the 2011 budget. And it set the stage, in essence, for what is really months of discussion on the budget. As you look at this and just view this from the outside, I hope this is seen as one of the most transparent processes that we have for financial planning anywhere in the state, or I think that you'll find anywhere in government. I think the significance of what we're going to discuss today is that, in effect, it is very little change from what you discussed in July. I think you might look at this as the norm of July is that it's a simple update. We didn't treat it that way. We treated July as the need to make a fundamental change in our financial plan because of the crisis that we're in, because of the need to be able to respond to that. And we put in place early on this year the fundamental building blocks that we were working off of, most prominently the need to be able to reduce our cost structure. When we started this year, we talked about what it would take to reduce costs. As we're sitting here today, now, approaching Thanksgiving at the end of the year, I think what we should recognize here is that we're no longer talking about what it will take to reduce costs. What we are talking about is the fact that we have reduced costs and that we have achieved savings that are over $500 million a year on an annual recurring basis. That work has effectively been done by this board and by the staffs of all of our agencies and the management team to be able to do that. But I think what this budget is telling us as we look out to the beyond that and underscoring again is that we're not stopping there. We started something in January. We've made a tremendous effort in what we're doing, but I think what Bob is going to outline is that we continue to move forward from there. We've identified actions for 2011 that will build upon the savings that we've already achieved and allow us to continue to reap those benefits both for the riders and the taxpayers of the state. Sometimes people refer to this as being easy. I will again and over again remind people there's nothing about this that has been easy. It's not been easy in terms of the actions we've taken. It's not been easy in terms of people who have been laid off. It's not been easy in any way that one could look at doing it. But the point is that we rose to be able to do it, and we made things happen. People sometimes assume that having done this, that our financial situation is now sound and stable. I'm sorry to say that that's not the case. Our financial situation remains extremely fragile. When we presented the July plan, we noted that there were numerous risks for the MTA in that plan. Bob will speak to that again, but those risks are still there. And subsequent to what we've done in July, some other things have happened, particularly the change in the earnings assumption for the pension plan, that have run very much in the wrong direction for us. So things are continuing to do. My strong view is that we need to stay the course that we set out in July. I think we're on the right course. I think we're doing the right things. This plan, again, will not be in any way a major change from that course. It is exactly the course that we're there. We must drive costs out of the organization. We must work to find a way to be able to stabilize the MTA's finances. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the plan you adopted in July and the plan that Bob will go over again today saves $1 billion a year, $1 billion a year in annual recurring costs by the time we get to 2014. That is something that I think we should be proud of. We should recognize the hard work it will take to build off what we've done, but as a board, as an organization, as a team, we should be very proud of that. Bob, I think you should go through the presentation, and then I would certainly open this up to discussion. Last point, just to make for clarity, there is no action required or requested of the board today. The action would take place next month. This is a preliminary look at the financial plan. It's an opportunity for discussion, and we do have the opportunity to be able to incorporate changes before we come forward with the financial plan for approval in December. Bob?
Thank you, Jay. To start, let's go back to the July plan. Now, the July plan, while it was not without risk, did give us a pretty reasonable financial roadmap to proceed. And this is where we ended up. You see here on this chart each of the years, 2010 through 2014. Above the line are the cash balances. Some might say surplus, but the cash balances that we're projecting to generate. Below the lines, you have the deficits. So you see here that we had projected a $12 million surplus in 2010. 2011, after the 7.5% fare and toll revenue yield increase, we were projecting a $67 million cash balance. In 2012, a $92 million deficit. In 2013, again, after the projected 7.5% fare and toll yield increase, a $156 million cash balance. But by the time we got to 2014, a $141 million deficit. Now, This roadmap closed the 2010 deficit, it balanced the 2011 budget, and it began to address these out-year deficits that we were facing. Now, there were 5 key elements, if you recall, that we went through in the July plan. First is there were to be no budget-driven service cuts. We weren't going to try to balance the budget with that. 2, we were going to have a continued focus on cost cutting to achieve, we'll say, 750 of recurring savings just in that regard. The chairman mentioned the $525 million of recurring savings that we started as an effort to close this budget, but we knew that would lead to ongoing savings. So the $525 there, but then we identified another $200 million of new MTA efficiency initiatives. And that's to build up over time, but we are on track there, and we'll talk more about both of those. But there was a third component to our savings, and that was to work with labor to achieve a $200 million, and actually $200 million plus, of net zero savings. And if you recall, this initiative said at the end of every contract, we were going to assume that wages would remain flat for 2 years, with increases only coming about through productivity savings. The fourth point, and an important point, was the implementation with the agreed-upon fare and toll increases that we negotiated with the legislature. You did pass, just last month and the month before, 7.5 to go into effect at the very end of this year for 2011. And particularly important right now is the last point. It's based upon the continued receipt of the dedicated taxes and the state and local subsidies that are built into this. Significant dollars, and we are relying upon those dollars. Now, all of these elements were important to the July plan, and they are being carried forward because they're critical to the November plan as well. So let's see where we are on the cost cutting. Well, of the $525 million of recurring savings that we started in 10, where are they going to be in 11? Well, we're going to have $100 million now of continuing administrative overhead savings. That's the 15% reduction that we had at the agencies. That's the 20% reduction at headquarters. We're looking at $66 million in unnecessary overtime being eliminated. We are continuing through 2010 the management wage freeze. So it's a management wage, or administrative wage freeze from 2009 to 10, saving $14 million through the plan. The overhaul of B&T generated about $25 million of savings. You recall last year we talked about the rapid renegotiation of contracts, where we said in an 8-week period we renegotiated with major vendors, generating $70 million of savings over the life of the contract. We'll capture about $22 million of that in 2011. We anticipate $80 million of savings for more efficient paratransit service. And we are going to benefit from the savings, $93 million of the transit service cuts. Carefully done, but painful. Well, what about these new MTA efficiency initiatives? Well, they are on track as well. What the graph shows you is the targets that we have per year from 2011 going to 2014. Starting at 75 next year, going to 125, 175, and then 200 million by 2014. We've identified certain areas for 2011. That doesn't mean that that's all we'll look at, but these are the things that we've identified as being the first and foremost things we're attacking. You heard just a board meeting or so ago about NYCT's healthcare rebid. Successful rebid that they did for the 150,000 employees, retirees, and dependents of the T and also of MTA Bus. It's to go into effect on January 1 of 2011. We're showing, and I think trying to be conservative, $33 million of savings going here, but look, we feel like once this is fully implemented and in place, we should be saving more than $50 million a year. And it is a 5-year contract, and so we expect to save, by the time it's done, more than $350 million. We have $20 million for strategic sourcing. Now, what do we mean by strategic sourcing? It sounds like kind of a business school term. But what we're really talking about here is we're looking to select capable vendors who are going to provide the necessary goods and services that we need at the lowest possible price. And to give you some examples, we're looking to optimize specifications, we're looking to standardize specifications, and we're looking to try to increase interagency cooperation. let me tell you, we can increase our specifications such that we have the perfect thing that we're trying to order. What we're doing is we're jacking up the price, and we may not be getting our money's worth in terms of real value. So that is being rethought. We also have, in fact, some vague specifications as you look across the MTA family, where one agency may not understand that what they're buying really is pretty much the same thing that another agency is buying as well, because it's vague. And so we're trying to tighten that up. We've gone through and we've looked at the 2009 expenditures, and as we've gone through and seen those for procurement, there's about $880 million in 10 different categories that we think is really ripe for this type of analysis. And we feel comfortable that we should be able to achieve about $20 million of savings during 2011. We have $15 million down here for consolidations of IT and communications. The chief information officers throughout the MTA family have already started to work on these. We have about 2,000 servers in 30 different computer rooms that they've identified and targeted for selective consolidation. They've gone through every one of the IT plan purchases or acquisitions for this year, doing the same kind of analysis done earlier about what can be deferred or what can be eliminated if it's not going to give us the type of ROI that we need, or it's not somehow else going to help meet a priority of the MTA. We're going through looking at call centers, consolidation there. We're looking at printing, production costs to see where we can reduce and save money. The last item that I mentioned here is inventory control. Long Island Railroad has identified about $7 million of savings that they can do really from rolling stock management. They feel that by carefully scrutinizing their work schedules as well as tightening up certain of their procurements, that they believe that they can then reduce and draw down about $7 million worth of inventory in stock now, which if we'd kind of followed regular procedures may have been drawn down to a point, but also we probably would have been recurring purchases. So again, it's just trying to think, what do we have, where is it, where do we need it, and they've identified this as savings. While that's one time in this instance, that type of thinking will generate ongoing savings. Let's back up just for a second. Let me just talk quickly about what's happened since the July plan. As the chairman said, in a sense, not a whole lot has happened, but in a sense it's almost like those the balls that click on each end. You see movement, but nothing really is moving. We have subsidies, and when you look at the subsidies since the February plan, the adopted budget, are down significantly. We're down about $558 million in terms of those subsidies, and that's what we've been working all year to try to address with the rollover from the prior year. From the July plan, and that carries through about $250 million, I should say, for 11 through the end of 14. When you look at the July plan, we've had a little bit of improvement in certain areas on the subsidies. So the PMT, we took down an extra $50 million, you might recall, in July. Well, we were too conservative there. It's come back a bit and looks like it will be above that. But the MTA aid that we were counting on, $60 million low this year, below projections, and it looks like about $38 or $40 million low going forward. Net subsidies from the July plan up a bit, but still way down from where we were at the beginning of the year in terms of our adopted budget. Ridership slightly down from the July plan. Expenses up and down in different categories, driven often by uncontrollable elements that just tend to rise. But the net, when you go through and look at the pluses, the minuses, there is only a slight deterioration in the finances. And I just say very slight. The deficits or the balances have gone down a bit, and the deficits have gone down, have increased. The one thing, however, that is the big change, and that's what the chairman alluded to, it's the increase in our estimate of pension cost relating to what the New York State Comptroller determined was the appropriate return on investment for the plans that he controls. The earnings assumption he took from 8% down to 7.5%. And while the Neisler's plan, New York State Local Employees Retirement System, affects only a small piece of our employees, headquarters primarily Long Island Bus, there is a trend out there that I think he recognized where the actuaries are believing that those assumptions have been historically too high and need to be reconsidered. So the estimate that we're putting in anticipates that there may be movement on the nicer system and on the DB plans that we have here, where that rate is reduced. Well, what does that really mean? Well, that is going to dramatically increase our out-year deficits. What this chart compares is that first chart we showed where we started in July, and that's the left bar below each date. So that was the July cash balances, or in solid green and in solid red, the July deficits, and compares it to where we are with the November plan. And again, remember I said all the things that happened this year, while there were ups and downs, they really didn't change much. But what did change is the increase in the estimate. Now, it phases in over time as plans make their change in assumptions and give us the new numbers that we need to raise. But the assumptions we're building in 2011, it's $34 million increase in our pensions. In 2012, it's $139 million. In 2013, it's $145 million. And by the time we get to 2014, it's $154 million increase in the pension estimate. Now, I want to make a comment here because you kind of see how the bars go. Remember that cash balance that we show always rolls over into the next year to help pay for costs the next year. That's just how we operate. If we do have extra money in one year, we roll it into the next year to meet current expenses. So as we're drawing down those balances, because our expenses are higher, the next year you're going to get a double whammy. You're going to get both the loss of the prior year balance and you're going to get the increased cost. So that's why when you get to 2013, 2014, you see that the extra pension cost almost completely eliminates the cash balance that we have in 13. There's no money to roll over into 14, and we still have the higher pension cost. So the sum total gives us an extra $300 million deficit projected for 2014. Now, that pretty much focuses on out years. But let me come back to this year because, there was a little bit of, good news in this year. In 2010 budget, and I'll first say I put this schedule up for those who really like numbers or those who can read really small print. What this is probably this key schedule that we present to the board and to the public. It's found in Volume 1, and on it it's on 2-1 and 2-2. What I've done here is I've condensed this operating statement, collapsed things, so as you go down the left side, it's just what are our revenues, what are our major operating expenses, labor, non-labor, depreciation, things like that. Where do we get our taxes from? What's our debt service? And then at the bottom, it's just the adjustments that we're making to the budget. Across the top, we start at 2010, the current year, and then we go 11 through 14. Let's talk about 2010. We had favorable debt service this year. And again, I think as you expect, our variable rate debt has come in significantly below our estimate. That's a very good positive. Another positive is in terms of timing. We've been issuing commercial paper, low-cost commercial paper, instead of bonds. Bonds can cost us 4.5%. Commercial paper, we were selling at 5%. So the fact that we relied on commercial paper early in the year more than bonds saved us a tremendous amount of money, too. So net, we saved about $86 million from debt service in 2010. Timing, we had certain expenses that we thought were going to hit in 2010, and this really, it's kind of FICA and some other things relating to retroactive wage adjustments that, again, we thought was going to hit in 10, it's going to hit in 11 now, and that's about $55 million shift, so that was positive. And then we have a reserve. We have a very small reserve that we've set up on our accounts. This year we had a $75 million dollar reserve, and that's less than 1% of our operating budget, so it doesn't give us much. We took $25 million in July. We had $50 million still on. We took that in. So we ended up with balances available for us in 2010, which let us go back and look at some of the things that we had eliminated in July. And one of those things that we did eliminate was the GASB 45 funding. Remember, we have an obligation for our retirees to fund their retirement benefits. And that obligation is a $13.2 billion unfunded liability. I mean, it's huge. And we are obligated to continue to fund those costs. The board made a decision several years ago to start trying to set aside monies to meet that obligation. And we had built into this budget, as in other budgets, $57 million to be set aside. When we got so tight in July, we made the recommendation that we eliminate that funding this year to reconsider it if we did have the funds. Another thing that we did, in the adopted budget, we had anticipated setting monies aside for energy hedges. We've done for the last couple of years hedges on primarily just our diesel fuel. We eliminated that again in July just because we were so tight. Now we're looking to put the energy hedge back on, set the money aside this year for the 11 cost, and in 11 consider putting it on for 12 as well. It was $82 million in the February plan. We're looking at 100, and it may not be that much, but the 100 also considers, for the first time, trying to hedge our compressed natural gas, for which we have a significant need. We have about, 79 million gallons that we do of diesel, and we probably do about 35 million therms on compressed natural gas. We haven't hedged that before. We're thinking about doing that now. So again, that's in the plan. And I will just point out, if we do that, you can kind of see down in the bottom yellow, not the very bottom, but the yellow, that, to the extent that we are not required, that $100 million will roll over and roll forward until 2012, and that right there is coming back in, and that's going to reduce that 2007 deficit. Or $207 million deficit in 2012. There's one other item that we have here. The July plan eliminated the bridge and tunnel holdback. You may recall we've had that in the February plan, and we've had it before. This was the possibility of taking a piece of the Triborough toll increase and setting that aside for Triborough's own capital program through debt service or some pay-as-you-go capital. And we've been kind of anticipating that debt service would be paid. And what we've been showing is a little piece that's available for pay-as-you-go. It was $31 million projected in 2011, $20 million in 12, I think 35 in 13, and just $2 million. It pretty much went away by that time. We're so tight right now that the proposal is right now that we would eliminate the pay-as-you-go piece of it only. The debt service would continue to be paid from that. It's something that we can look at as we go forward, but we have eliminated that just because things are so tight. Again, the bottom line here is the same thing you saw on the prior chart. Very, very thin margins of cash balances in 10, 11, $207 million of deficit in 13, a small deficit of $2 million in 13 rather, and a $440 million in 2014. The chairman talked about the risk. We identified the risk during the July plan. Those risks are still here in the November plan. And given the deficits we're facing, the risk, become much more critical to us. The first is the state's financial crisis. The plan is based upon receiving all the money that we believe that we should be receiving from the dedicated taxes and subsidies from the state. Now, we do know that when the state was facing the $9.2 billion deficit early, we got hit at the end of last year with $143 million. We got hit with the $17 million again this year. The state, looking to fiscal year 2012, is projecting a possible $9.2 billion deficit. I'll just leave the ellipsis points there. We're not sure. Economic uncertainty. The current forecasts do reflect our economic weakness, and the economy could continue as it is. Hopefully it improves, but the economy could go down. And I just make the point, we have very few financial reserves to be able to accommodate that, any change from the state or from just economic measures. Labor settlements and success of the net zero initiative is important. As I pointed out, we were looking for $200 million plus over the term of the financial plan. The 2011 savings are about $32 million, and that pretty much reflects the railroad contracts that expired in 2010. The real bigger dollars come in 2012 and beyond based on the expiration of the TWU contract at the beginning of 12. We're built into the plan, and you'll see in the numbers $112 million in 12, 199 in 13, and 220 million by the time you get to 14. There's some long-term vulnerabilities, and kind of at the risk of being a one-string banjo, working capital is an issue for me. Again, we have a $12 billion operating budget. That means $1 billion a month is what we spend. That's $250 million a week. We have funding sources that are delayed, and as we all know from MMTOA, a significant, more than half of the MMTOA monies are going to come into the last month of this year. Having working capital available is very important, and it is a risk, I understand, because if people see you sitting with money on your balance sheet, they assume that you could use it for almost anything else. But $250 million, is just 1 week of expenditures. It's not that much. Pensions, we just saw from the earlier chart that just a change in the pension rate of return assumption can have a big impact on our budget. Pensions have been growing significantly. Over the last decade, CPI has probably been about 2.8%. Pensions have grown on an annual basis 18.8% during that decade. You go to health care cost, and we've talked about retiree cost, OPEBs, and the $13 billion unfunded liability. Well, the retiree health care cost over the last decade have grown almost 11%, compounded annually, so every year increasing. The employee health care cost, about 10% during that period of time. Debt service is about 5.8% increase during the time. I put those out there just because we have to address them. And these things right there are really what drive the out-year deficits that we have. The chart that we showed was not kind of unusual in its profile in terms of big out-year deficits. I think it's unusual in that the numbers get very large here. But that's what's driving it. And unless we can start to address those issues, we're going to continue to see this. And we're going to constantly, I think, feel like we're climbing out of a hole. So I put them up here as vulnerabilities and things that need to be addressed. And as we start working toward the July plan, things never end, as you work toward the July plan, we will be putting together a plan of actions to address these things. That really concludes the formal presentation, but I kind of feel I do need to address one other point. The July plan, as you recall, eliminated any MTA subsidy for Long Island Bus. The November plan continues that. There is no subsidy for Long Island Bus built into this. We believe that's Nassau County's responsibility. We did receive a proposal from Nassau County, and as we looked at the proposal, we just felt that the proposal, it was lacking in a number of areas. First, we feel that it kind of fails to acknowledge Nassau County's responsibility to fully fund the Long Island Bus. We feel that there is no additional funding above the $9.1 million that they put into their budget, which is what they were paying this year, in 2011. So no additional dollars. And there was the thought of additional funding coming down the line, but that additional funding was subject to actions being taken by others to enact new taxes, and those taxes then would be available for for Long Island Bus. The problem is, if the taxes weren't enacted, that really would be our risk because the monies wouldn't be there. Also, the amount of collections, if they didn't come in at forecast, that would be the MTA's risk there. And we just felt that, those are inappropriate risk. And even if the money did come through, as the full projected amount, really by the time you got to 2014, it still was leaving half that, deficit uncovered. So looking at, based on monies that are in the budget and looking at what we have, during the financial plan period, a subsidy would require about $96 million to fund. The November plan does not have that money in it. Mr. Chairman, that's the presentation and comments.
Bob, thank you. As I said, I think the financial plan broadly follows what this board put forth and adopted in July, but I would certainly open it up for discussion and conversation now. Jeff?
I just have one quick question. There's a lot to digest. How much money are we expecting in December from the state and the MMTOA? Half of that? What's the dollar amount?
$800 million.
So what happens if we don't get it by December 31st?
Yeah. Right now, we have no indication that we're not receiving any of the money. It clearly is a large amount. It clearly is something that I think the state understands how much we need that money. So at this point, I'm assuming that we are receiving that money.
State Senate. There is no state Senate.
Receiving the money does not require legislative action. Is that correct, Bob?
Right.
It is already an appropriated source.
Right.
So you don't need legislative action to receive the money. Other comments, questions, clarifications that we can provide on this? Obviously, just the start of a discussion for us. Doreen?
Any forecast, of course, is only as good as the assumptions that you put into it, and I just want to understand some of your interest rate assumptions. For example, you say economic uncertainty, current forecasts reflect current economic weakness. Could you tell me what you're using as an assumption in the next couple of years about?
Yeah, we look at a forward curve, and we use both the AA curve, muni curve, and a single A yield curve.
Not interest rates on our debt, but I'm talking about generally the economic growth, the growth in the subsidy, et cetera.
Yeah, we're using global insights in all of our analysis, and that factors into both employment projections that we have as well as other economic factors. We're continuing to project growth, but at a diminished level in terms of your subsidies from what we had at the February plan. The only thing where we really seem to see kind of a change and a pickup is on the MRT revenues. By the time we get to 2014, we had been seeing MRT continuing to lag behind. The urban taxes were picking up, but in 2014, we do seem to see MRT coming back in at that time.
And some of that detail, I imagine, is in some of these huge
it's in the full,
times. Yes. And again, the interest, you started on the interest rate assumptions. What interest rate assumptions? Because we've been generous in those, I think, in the past.
Yes, we have. Our 2011, if I recall, we're assuming a 5.07% interest rate for the transportation. By the time we get to 2014, we're up almost to 1.5%. We're projecting a 6.47 or 49%. Interest rate. So we are projecting that interest rates will be higher. We're still going to hold our variable rate at 4%, and I know that it has turned out to be, significantly, we've generated significant savings from that. There will be increases, and what I'm concerned about, and we've talked about this a bit too, is we've been very fortunate on bank facilities that we have. We've been paying a very, very low fee on bank facilities, which are necessary to support much of our commercial paper program or variable rate debt. We're now seeing bids, and we have accepted bids from those that are well over 1 percentage point higher. And in fact, we did not accept some proposals because we just didn't want to pay the higher price. When you talk to people, there is a mixed read on whether we will see just long-term rates, short-term rates, what's going to happen. I would rather be conservative, on our rates. We do make adjustments mid-year. We bring savings into account when we have lower rates. So it's not like we wait until the end of the year. We try to recognize savings mid-year. But I would want to continue to be cautious about where short-term rates and long-term rates can go.
Yeah, let me talk about Long Island Bus for a second. We remain committed to continuing it on behalf of the 30 million people who ride it. We met November 8th on Long Island and had certain understandings in that meeting. My colleague Bob, who's been a friend for a long time, I think, who was not at the meeting, I think mischaracterizes. One, two, it was disappointing to read the MTA's response in Newsday despite an agreement not to do that. The county remains interested in continuing to talk to resolve this. I think there's a common recognition that ceasing service on January 1st would both be unacceptable and that a privatization option, which is being explored, also would not be feasible to be in place by January 1st. Counties broke 4 points on that. Moody's downgraded us. I sent that report to the board a week or two ago. Second, in certain circles, talk about a knife at control period has increased. Three, I think it's fair to say that there are a number of risks in the county budget. Four, the county executive, I think, has taken bold, decisive action to deal with the county's fiscal issues on both a short and a long-term basis. Today, Comptroller Maragos issued a press release indicating his support of the county's approach on this, and I would hope that going forward, agreements that are reached in terms of how things get negotiated and disclosed or not disclosed will be honored. Otherwise, this is very distressing.
Jim, I think you were next.
Thank you. Very enlightening presentation as always, Bob. The practice is carried forward here as it has been in the past, not to carry forward deficits in the projections, but only surpluses. Are you confident that? But the numbers we're talking about in both 12 and 14 are not insignificant. Are we relying on our ability to fund those short-term and or long-term in order to make this plan work? Is it fully integrated, or is this just a wing and a prayer?
We're prepared to, begin addressing both the 2012 and the 2014 deficits right away. I mean, we're already looking at it and we're trying to formulate plans. We can handle intra-year, problems and cash flows by borrowing short-term, and we have, as you know, done that this year. We can't do anything long-term to kind of take a deficit and bond against that. So we do need to address our deficits on a year-by-year basis. That is why, clearly, if we do have excess cash at the end of 1 year, the goal is to make sure if we need it, we can keep it going to when we do, when it's going to be applied against one of those deficits. But right now, we're prepared to address these. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. I think the plan that we have in place toward the $1 billion that the chairman mentioned will take a lot of work. We're convinced to keep pushing to see where we can find additional savings and efficiencies.
Two questions, Bob. First, the assumptions on dedicated taxes and subsidies in the out years, 11, 12, and beyond. Do our assumptions mirror the assumptions that the state has in its 5-year plan?
I don't. It does.
So that everybody is on the same page in relation to what the assumptions will be going forward. Whether we meet those assumptions is a whole different question, but that's the assumptions being from the division of the budget and our aspect of it.
We may have different numbers as we've seen this year.
Right.
But yes.
Okay. The second issue is on the chart, our operating expenses each year, at least with a quick mathematics, go up about 5% a year.
Close.
Not forgetting subsidies, forgetting revenues, just operating expenses year to year go up about 5%. And that takes into account that has already, I assume, been reduced by the savings that occurs.
Now, what happens? We've broken the savings down in different pieces. There's
Okay.
the $525 million that's in those numbers.
That's
So
that's in
above the line, as we call it. So
right. That's in total operating expenses.
Yeah.
Okay.
The $200 million that we have for new MTA efficiencies and the $200 million for the net zero labor fall below the line into plan adjustments. You'll see them there.
Right.
And as we realize those, or as we put them, then they'll be brought above the line. And you'll see then.
So the goal, I won't use the word assumption. I hate the word assumption. The goal would be that our year-to-year expenses will be less than the 5% outlined when you include the savings in those two categories and any other categories we can find, that at the end of the year, year to year would be less than 5%.
That's correct.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Okay, thank you.
To repeat what Bob said, because I think it's important, the underlying factors that are pushing up those expenses in terms of pensions and health care and debt service are astronomical. Pensions going up over 18% a year, health care, retiree and employee health care going up by 10 to 11% a year. When you look at an increase that's taking place of 5%, the only way you get to 5% is by actually taking out a heck of a lot of other costs to be able to do that.
Bob, if at some point between now and December, if you could put together a chart with those increases year to year so that we can see, based on the chairman's point, as to exactly where the year-to-year expense adjustments are being made first, and then we can take them off afterward. But that would be helpful in explaining to those people who want to understand exactly why, even though we're doing everything, our assumptions go up, our expenses go up at that number.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you, Jay. What started out, at least on my part, as a bit of a leap of faith in your telling us that we could get to a point of fiscal sanity we've now actually gotten to a place where I can see it very clearly. The promises that you made to the public a year ago come to fruition. We have saved $500 million over the last year of unnecessary costs. You've got a solid plan here in place to do more. It seems to me that the goal is to get less expensive and to provide more service. And while we are in an economy that teeters somewhere between bleak and a little less bleak, we have found a point by which we can solidly show the public that we're listening. We haven't agreed totally with each other on how to get there, but we've gotten to a point where we are in a lot better financial footing than when you found this place. And so for that, I say thank you. And, I believe that we've come a long way, and there's still a lot more work to be done. I agree with you that there are still some troubling long-term vulnerabilities. Certainly, our pension and employee costs have to be severely looked at as we go forward. We need to do that collaboratively with labor and deal that. And I hope that we have a positive relationship going forward on that score. I don't want to negotiate in public with Long Island. They are an important part of this operation, and I hope that everything that can be done on both sides will be done to help us provide the services to some people who are desperately in need of those services. One of the things that's remarkable to me about this process, aside from how we got there to the numbers, is how much we play this out in public. And when we sit in these public hearings and we are attacked for our lack of transparency, I wonder if anybody is paying attention. I mean, we play this entirely out in front of the whole world. It's all of our numbers and all of our budgets and all of our proposals are broadcast. They're all online for people to get the information that they want. In my 30 years of being in government or around government, this is one of the most remarkably transparent processes that we go through. In fact, it angers me that our former controller, Alan Hevesy, made the comments about two sets of books, which perhaps is one of the most injurious things that he's done to public policy in this state. in undermining the public confidence, because if there is a more audited, a more scrutinized public agency that exists in the world, I don't know what it is. But Jay, under your leadership, we've come a long way, and I look forward to the day when we can be now talking about increasing service. I saw in the paper this morning, I heard last night about the mayor proposing increased services to New Jersey. And I love the mayor because he's a visionary and he thinks big, and right now we're in the weeds trying to dig out. But I like the idea that someday things are going to get better, and that not only New Jersey residents, but residents in Staten Island and in Brooklyn and in Nassau County and Suffolk and other parts of the northern suburbs can get increased services. And I hope that we all keep staying the course that eventually we'll get there, Jay. Thank you.
Yes, Bob, regarding the forecast for revenue, especially MMTOA and the MRT, I noticed the MMTOA was flat. There were no increases 2013, 2014. Is that because it's out years, or is there some reason that we think that we're not going to see increases in some of those revenues?
Those projections were based on economic forecasts made by the state.
Oh, we're using the state budget.
Those out-year forecasts.
Yeah, and the MRT, I'm just wondering what it even said. We're not using what we used to
MRT,
use.
we try to do our forecasts in conjunction with the city. In this instance, we didn't have those forecasts yet, but there were conversations that took place between City OMB and
we have a fair level of confidence they're good for at least the next 2 years.
That's
the MRT,
yeah. Extremely volatile tax, but that's the best information we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to pretend an overstatement in terms of our confidence on economic forecasts right now, Ira. So I think we've made a reasonable set of assumptions in a difficult climate to be able to predict what's there. We have worked both with the state and with the city to be able to understand the things that are affecting different regions and different parts of the MTA region. But as somebody once said, and I could only repeat, the only thing you know about a forecast is that it'll be wrong. We've done our best, I think, to be able to deal with it. It is an exceptionally difficult economic climate. All of the trends really are a broken line going backwards, and in effect, economic forecasting assumes that you look backward and you project forward. That's exceptionally difficult to do in this climate. Mark?
I'd just like to echo that thought. I mean, I think that New York City is actually reasonably good at economic forecasting and translating that into tax revenues. That said, as Jay just remarked, you're guaranteed to be wrong. So, I mean, it's very hard to accurately foresee, particularly the ups and downs in transactions in the real estate market. And those taxes are heavily driven often by single, very large transfers of ownership, and it's very hard to be right. It's something that you just have to watch as you go, and you do your best, and you're obliged for planning purposes to rely on the best you can foresee, but it's something that you just have to keep watching as you go to find what actually happens.
Well, can I just say one thing about? I just think that's something we have to make sure people understand, because if something should happen, somehow it's the MTA's fault, and if revenue doesn't come in, or these urban tax is extremely volatile, as Mark said. The MRT probably a little bit less so, but I think there's so little money in it now. I don't know, but any impact on our budget could be severe. So I think going forward, we all have to know we're kind of walking the tightrope here on not just on expenditures, but also on revenue. And I think it's important for the public to understand that, and that's represented in these books. And I guess what Mark is telling me is the city's very better, so I should trust that the urban tax predictions are better than the MMTOA predictions from the state. Well, because the state got us on the new tax.
I think let me add one more exclamation point on that, which, again, just to echo something Bob already said. We all recognize, as we've just been talking about, the difficulty of forecasting and indeed the fragility of the economy that we're dealing with right now. We have virtually no reserves in the company. As Bob said, we operate a business that has an $11.7 billion budget with a $75 million reserve, which is, in some ways a laughable outcome, and leaves us in a situation where things do change, even if they don't change markedly, they have almost immediate effects on the things that we're able to do. And we have not, for all the work that we've done on this, we have not found a way right now to take ourselves out of that situation. We continue to have that vulnerability as you look at this financial plan. I think some things we may come in will be a little bit better, some things will be a little bit worse, but if more than a few things get a little bit worse, we will be in a situation in which we will have no choice but to go back and revisit the other things that we've had to look at. Having said all that, I think as a package, we've tried to come up with a reasonable set of assumptions and a way to be able to do it. We must recognize the risk and the fragility of this. I can't, there's nothing we've been able to do to take that out. I can't give you any comfort about that. Pat?
Yeah, Bob, three factual questions on Long Island Bus. The first is, what are the assumed increases in operating expenses in the out years, recognizing that the proposed budget cuts the subsidy from 26 and 10 to 0? In that regard, I'll note that the amount of the subsidy assumed here in 11 is 7% less than a subsidy in 10, and the subsidy in 13 is fully 20% less than a subsidy before. As I recall, the numbers in the out years that provided an MTA subsidy of 33 million. Yeah. Second, just to get them all out, second, are things like the health care rebid, which was done for New York City Transit, a good thing? Can that be done with respect to Long Island Bus? And thirdly, can other programs, like, for instance, the energy hedge with respect to CNG, be done with respect to CNG purchases by Long Island Bus? Asking that question as a specific but more general application of other cost-cutting initiatives' applicability to Long Island Bus. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. One of the things that changes those, what we now have as the projected subsidies, remember, when we have a fare increase, so the fare increase that comes in 11 and the projected fare increase that comes in 13, that's going to reduce the amount of monies that are needed for the subsidy.
I was told that was in the 11 budget for Long Island Bus, the fare increase.
We have it. That's why we're looking at a $24 million instead of, I think, the $28 million that we had in the July plan. Okay. Secondly...
all right, let's not debate it now.
Okay. In terms, I think the Long Island Bus employees are not in the self-insured plan that the TA employees are. They are Empire, so you're going to be affected. Those employees are going to be affected by whatever Empire's rate increases, premium increases are. So we don't have the same kind of ability to manage there.
CNG.
Okay. Yeah, and CNC, that if we can reduce our energy cost, that would flow through to the operating budget, and that would reduce it. Okay. I have to say there is we would want to make sure that if we're doing something definitely for the benefit of Long Island Bus, and Long Island Bus is the biggest user, of CNG, that to the extent that we do it, it's with Nassau County's, full endorsement. Because I have to say, a hedge is not something that can always be perfect. The hedge is supposed to provide certainty to you in budget, and that's the only reason you really do kind of energy hedges in budgets. It helps provide certainty. But that doesn't mean that you're making the right call and you lock in prices at one level and then you feel like such a hero if prices rise. But if prices fall, you just don't want to be accused of then having, done something improperly. So I would just say, it is a way of blocking uncertainty, but we would only want to do that, too, if we had full assurance that you understand the risk and you're doing it. So
we work together like it's in a movie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Just one quick question, and I'll find it in the book, Bob. So I'm sorry, but just in doing some quick math on a bad calculator, so this could be wrong. It looks like non-labor expenses are going up 27% between 2010 and 2014, and 17% on versus 17% increase on the labor expenses. I take it that most of the adjustments are going to be rested against the non-labor portion of this?
Most of the cost cut that you see are non-labor.
Except, obviously, the non-represented wage freeze
Right.
and things like that. Okay. I'll look and see what the detail is on what these non-labor
Okay.
costs are. But I was just surprised at the percentages.
What we built into the plan on labor, too, in terms of wage cost, which is the biggest component, as we've described in there, when we reach the end of the contract, it's just whatever CPI is as well. So that's going to be, that's going to be lower than the factors that are inflating some of our other non-personnel issues. Okay?
That I've not missed anyone in this process. Okay, Jim, you wanted to...
Jay, yes, I'm sorry to come back again, but your comment about the knife edge situation that we find ourselves in, notwithstanding these very laudable efforts, I think just adds further weight to the attention that we as a board and the agency, I think, as a whole, needs to pay to, through whatever means possible, trying to influence the achievement of reliable subsidies down the road from different sources that we, as an agency, can not only rely on receiving, but also having them in some kind of a lockbox. It sounds like a bit of pie in the sky, but we can't just, I don't think, sit here and say we're in terrible shape, we're on a knife edge, and not take an active position to say, and we need to fix it, and to turn to the people who are in a position to do so. The commuter councils have maintained this position. Other transit advocacy groups have, and I just hope that both in private and in public, that both the board and the agency look to its lights to get this done.
Okay, I'm going to close this discussion. I think that last point, of course, underscores the importance of transit to our region and the fact that the MTA, like every other transit agency in the country and indeed around the world, is able to offer transit with the help of support from federal, state, and local governments in the way that we do it. I think there has been a long history of a recognition of the need for that support. I believe and I hope that it will continue going forward. I think that this is an exceptionally difficult economic climate that we've been grappling with. But I also believe that it is our responsibility in this, and I believe we're showing our responsibility in this, to be able to show the taxpayers of the state of New York and the local governments that we are making every dollar count for the monies that we get, that we're using those dollars wisely, that we're showing people that we take seriously that those are hard-earned dollars. I think what's most important for our agency right now has been rebuilding the credibility that we are doing that, and I hope people are seeing that we're doing that right now. It's the strongest leg we have to stand on beyond the importance of this, and as you've heard me say before, the fact that we are such an essential public service does not in any way excuse the need for us to operate efficiently and effectively with every dollar that we received. This board, I know, is committed to that same thing. And that's what I think we need to do on a going forward basis, and then we need to take that argument to all of our governmental partners to continue to maintain the support that's necessary for our operating budget and for our capital budget. With that, I would turn, there will be further discussion, of course, of the budget. We will have action items in the month of December. And as I think Doreen has pointed out, the book is both large and filled with small print. We invite your more careful review of it over the next month. If I can turn to the report from the committees. First, the report from the Committee on Finance. Andrew, please.
Yes.
Jay, I'd just like to say that the Finance Committee will be monitoring, since this is a razor-thin budget. No question, as everybody said, it can go either way. We have our monthly Finance Committee meeting. We will be watching this very, very closely, and the Finance Committee will obviously report back to the board if we see any major deterioration or any change in the health of our budget. Let's see. There is one action item. The action item is for approval to terminate the TB-TA swap with AMBAC. I move the action item.
Do you have in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
There is one non-competitive procurement in the amount of $20,800. I move this procurement.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
There is one competitive procurement in the amount of $177,500. I move this procurement.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
There is one ratification in the amount of $4,231,584. I move this procurement.
Have a second?
Second.
In favor? Opposed?
And there are 3 real estate action items this month, which are described in the board materials, and I move these action items.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
That concludes our report.
Thank you. I'll move to the Transit Committee. Doreen, please.
Transit Committee presents the following: 7 procurements totaling $136.1 million, and 2 non-competitive procurements in the amount of $16 million. They're recommended, and I move them.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
This month, there are 5 competitive procurements in the amount of $120.1 million. The committee recommends these, and I move them.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
No ratifications, and that concludes the report.
Thank you very much. The Committee on Bus Operations. Nancy, please.
Yes, I'd like to present for the board's approval. I'd like to present for the board's approval. There are 2 non-competitive procurements in the amount of $52.3 million. I move them.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
There were no competitive nor ratifications.
Okay.
That concludes it.
Thank you very much. The report from the Metro North and Long Island Committees. Mitch, I think we move east this month.
That's right, my turn this month. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the average on-time performance of the 2 railroads this month for October was over 95%, a great achievement for both railroads. There are 2 action items. The first action item is for approval for Metro North to enter into a contract to accept $300,000 for a congestion mitigation air quality grant from the New York State Department of Transportation to support connecting services covering the period October 1st, 2010 through September 30th, 2011. This action item was approved by the committee, and I move it.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
The second action item is for approval for Metro North to increase the per-ticket subsidy for the Westchester County DOT unit ticket and to increase the customer price on per-ticket subsidy for the Westchester County DOT shuttle unit ticket, effective with the sale of January 2011 monthly tickets. This was approved by the committee, and I recommended and move it.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
There are 2 non-competitive procurements, one for Long Island Railroad and one for Metro North, in the total amount of $17,352 million. This includes the contract for the New York Industries for the Disabled. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
And there are 5 competitive procurements, 2 for Long Island Railroad, 2 for Metro North, and 1 for MTA Capital Construction in the amount of $39.487 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
In favor? Opposed?
And there are no ratifications. This completes the commuter rail report.
We now move to the coveted Bridges and Tunnels Committee.
We have one action item, which is for the approval of a resolution which will adopt a new regulation imposing an administrative fee known as the toll violation fee in the amount of $50 for each toll collection violation on the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority's bridges and tunnels, and authorize the president of the authority or his designee to take all such steps that may be necessary and desirable to establish, implement, and permanently adopt pursuant to law the new regulation. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We have no non-competitive procurements, and we have 2 competitive procurements in the amount of $2.57 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And we have the Committee on Corporate Governance. That has 3 action items. Jim, can I take them all together? Is that as one vote, or do they have to be separate votes?
You can take
Okay.
them together.
So there are 3 action items. The Committee on Corporate Governance met. The first is the approval of the revised governance guidelines. The second is the approval of revisions to the board committee charters for the transit and CPOC committees. And the third action item is the approval of the revised all-agency responsibility guidelines. These were all discussed at the Committee on Corporate Governance. The charters were discussed at the respective committees for transit and CPOC, and I would move them. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that concludes our public session. If I can please ask for a motion to move into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations pursuant to Section 105 of the Public Authorities Law. Second, in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. You did it once before. It's the thing you need for the Henry Hudson Bridge. Who's up?
Mr. Walder, there's a lot of excitement apparently now about this idea of moving the number 7 train into New Jersey. It's an idea that some people say has been around for a while, but many people haven't heard of. Can you just give us an idea on your scale, as you see it, from reality all the way to fantasy, where this really is?
Well, as a transportation professional here, it is very exciting. I think one of the things that it really says to us is that the region continues to look at the importance of public transportation to further the region, for the economic growth, for the prosperity that we want to see, and for essentially the development of a 21st century region that we have here. Some of you will have heard me talk about breaking down the national border of the Hudson River. And I think finding ways to be able to do that is terrific. Whether we do it in fare policy, whether we do it in the way we operate trains through Penn Station now out to the Meadowlands, whether we do it in terms of future capital investments. Having said all that, I think the deputy mayor was very clear that this is an initial idea, an initial proposal. It has not been studied carefully in the way that the capital projects of this magnitude and size would need to do. It has not gone through the environmental process in the way that capital projects of this size need to do, and so all of that remains. And finally, I guess I'd make the point that as an organization right now, we have 3 mega projects underway. It's the first time we've had this in more than a generation. The primary focus of this organization right now is on bringing those projects into the budget and the schedule that we have and completing those projects so they can provide the benefit that we have for New York. It is appropriate to look beyond that, but we can't look beyond the clear objectives that we have right now.
So does that mean that you wouldn't be, if this moves forward, the MTA wouldn't be providing any money for the 7-line extension if it were to go forward?
There is no money in our capital program for any mega projects beyond the 3 that we have underway. And as you may recall, our capital program already has a large funding gap.
Have you had any conversations with the governor-elect, and if so, how have they gone? What did you talk about?
I have not yet talked to the governor-elect. I have talked to his staff, and I look forward to speaking with him and working with the new administration.
Well, to what degree has the MTA been involved in this initial idea process of the 7 extension?
Well, I think the point that was made before was right. I think the number 7 extension is a project that has been discussed within the regional planning authorities and programs for many years. It is not, in that sense, a new idea in doing it. The MTA has always participated in doing that. We have not had a lot of discussion specifically with the deputy mayor prior to sometime yesterday afternoon.
Would you rather see that ARC money go to other purposes rather than the 7 train?
Well, what I'd really rather like to see is that we have an ability through resources at the federal, state, and local level to undertake a program of work that continues to maintain our existing core system for the transit system, that completes the mega projects that we have underway, and that moves us forward to even new initiatives that will be there. And I think that's what I'd really like to see. We're a little way short of all of that right now.
Would this fall into a new initiative in the third tier you just?
Well, I think this is in the new initiative, and I think we have a capital program that has been approved by the Capital Program Review Board. It seeks to do two things right now. It seeks to maintain our existing system, to invest in the nuts and bolts of our rail and bus systems, to buy cars, to fix tracks, to do signal systems, and to do all the things that are essential to moving 8.5 million people a day. It seeks to have the funding to be able to complete the mega projects that we have underway, the number 7 line extension, the East Side Access Project, and the 2nd Avenue Subway Project. And it recognizes that there may be new initiatives going forward and looks toward new initiatives that would be there as well. I hope, as a region, that we will have the resources to do all of these things, and we'll consider it in that context.
Mr. Walter, about the SAIC radio contract. We're already talking about hearing a waiver, perhaps. The bid is below your in-house estimate. Why do you believe that this is not going to be turn out to be a disaster contract for the MTA as it has, as involvement with the city has?
Well, I think the contract is very different from anything that SAIC has been working on with the city. We were obviously aware of the questions that have been raised about the city time contract. We took time, New York City transit officials took time to do due diligence, to be in contact with city officials, to be in contact this week with the city controller's office as well, to understand their views. I think what you're looking at here is a bid that we received on this contract that is over $30 million less than the next bid. That's a saving of public dollars. This contract, like every other contract that the MTA lets, will require us to manage the contract, to be vigilant in the way that we do that, and we need to do that. We need to, as we do for all of our contracts, and we are committed to doing that.
Chairman, about the budget, you said, if there are unforeseen shortfalls that come up, you said, we will have no choice but to go back and look at some of the other things we've had to look at. Can you elaborate? What did you mean by that?
My point is that we have a budget in which we have laid out a plan over the next few years that will provide a balanced budget over that time, that relies on cost savings that we are making internally and that I believe that we can do to be able to do that, that maintains the schedule of fare and toll increases that was put forth by the legislature and that, as you know, we held to in the way that we were doing it this year. I was underscoring a point that I think our CFO made and that I would continue to make. The budget is extremely tight. We have virtually no reserves in our budget right now, and any things that happen in terms of the economy, for example, or anything of that nature, we're going to have to deal with in ways that I can't just look to some cushion to be able to deal with that. There is no cushion to be able to deal with that. On the other hand, I think what you do have here now is a budget that does reflect a very clear approach in the way we're going to approach this, that takes our savings in the MTA, annual recurring savings, $500 million from what we've done this year, increasing those savings to $1 billion a year. I think that is a significant step that we've taken in doing it, and the benefit of that is that it gives us a balanced program over that period of time.
Why did you reduce the pension assumption, the investment return assumption, if you didn't have to? Because most of the MTA staff is not in the NYSERS system.
Well, I think, first of all, the state controller has already taken action in regard to the NYSERS system, the New York State retirement system. It is appropriate in putting forth a budget and a plan to make the best assumptions that you can make going forward, and all we've done is to make an assumption of what may well be the action that is taken across the rest of the MTA. I don't think we can miss the fact that interest rates are significantly less than had previously been expected, and that does affect the earnings rate. I mean, it's a real phenomenon that's going on.
So there are clearly a lot of financial variables that would impacting the 7-line extension idea. But I was wondering from an operations standpoint, is it feasible for the 7-line to absorb commuters from New Jersey? Could the stations handle it? Can the trains handle it?
I, at this point, don't know the answer to that. We haven't looked at it in that kind of detail.
My question, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but are there components of the 7-line extension? I know the city's paying for the construction, but aren't there components of it that still, for the existing extension that you're underway, aren't funded, like other cars and additional expenses? Or is everything covered?
The project is fully funded. We still have bids that we have to get in to be able to do that. There is no money. There's no MTA money in this project. It is a city-funded project, and it's covered right now.
Can you talk about the substance of your conversations with the governor-elect's staff, and what sorts of issues you guys have focused on, and how those have been going?
The substance of the conversation so far has been to talk about how they're putting forth a transition team, which they've indicated they're doing right now. The recognition of that we were putting forth a budget at today's meeting, as we have done right now. And the desire in both parts to begin to engage more in more detail than that. But that's as far as we've gone.
Thank you.